Trump doubles down after Iran backs out of the meeting in Doha.
Things are going very well in that regard. But the meeting in Doha will perhaps be very important. Or maybe not. We'll find out. But we are winning militarily. I would say it's almost won militarily. But we are winning militarily. I would say it's almost won militarily.
Tehran denied that it has any negotiations scheduled with the United States in the coming days, even after Washington announced that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner would go to Qatar to discuss the Memorandum of Understanding on ending the war. The White House talks about a high-level meeting. Trump says he is winning militarily. And Tehran responds by saying that its delegation is going to Doha only to follow up on technical details. That's when the tension rises. Then the meeting turns into a test of power. Israel watches everything closely while facing accusations at the United Nations and trying to prove that it is not isolated.
He faces accusations at the United Nations. Aversa, Arbats has a mattress there. You'd suggest it. Hungary's change is at the UN too.
Liz, not yet. Not yet, but we certainly expect that it won't be the same thing. Orban was a true friend of Israel and the United States.
The war stopped on paper, but the pressure is still alive behind the scenes. What is Tehran trying to gain? Why did Trump raise the tone? How did Doha become a test of strength? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward and no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. The Iranian government stated that there will be no meeting with American officials in the coming days. The person who spoke was Esmail Bakay, spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran. He said that Tehran is focused on enforcing the Memorandum of Understanding, especially the articles related to oil sales and the release of frozen assets. According to Bakay, an Iranian technical delegation is expected to travel to Doha later this week, but this trip would not be related to the presence of Trump's representatives in Qatar. Washington took a different approach. The White House reported that Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, and Jared Kushner are going to Doha for meetings about Iran. The spokesperson Caroline Leavitt stated that the United States is fulfilling its part of the truce, but made it clear that violence will be met with violence. This warning carries weight because the 14-point memorandum signed on June 17 sought to end 4 months of conflict, suspend hostilities, and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a vital passage for the global flow of oil and liquefied natural gas. Iran is trying to turn the trip to Doha into a technical discussion, not a political negotiation. Bakay stated that talks for a final agreement have not yet begun because, according to the Iranian version, previous parts of the memorandum must first be fulfilled.
It's clear what the narrative is, right? It's the narrative that your spokesperson announced very quickly. We had absolutely no plans to meet with the Americans at any level in the coming days, so there was nothing for us to cancel. From the beginning as well, Mr. Garababadi announced this just as I did yesterday. Will it also happen tomorrow in the city of Doha? What Bolsonaro said a lot is that the political talks in Doha, it's a very detailed discussion of the effective implementation of some items of the Memorandum of Understanding, including the item related to the release of blocked Iranian assets, which will be discussed with the parties from Qatar. Therefore, I emphasize again, there will be no meeting at any level. We are not planning anything with the American side for the coming days. The process of effectively implementing the various points established in the Memorandum of Understanding, specifically including the item related to the release of assets, is currently taking place underway as planned. As for the 11th item, all necessary measures have already been duly taken, and we sincerely hope that, God willing, the work will progress properly and fully achieve the result we so desire.
The reading in Washington is different. If Tehran asked for relief oil, frozen funds, and stability, then it needs to show up at the table, make a commitment, and stop acting as if it can choose only the benefits of the agreement. Trump entered this scenario without lowering his tone. He said that the United States is winning militarily and treated the meeting in Doha as something that may or may not be important, depending on Iranian behavior. If Iran shows up, it shows up under pressure. If it doesn't, it confirms the image that it backed out of the meeting. The tension also involves oil. After the agreement that reduced pressure on Hormuz and made room for easing on Iranian energy products, Trump celebrated the drop in gasoline prices in the United States. For him, this is a political point both internally and externally. Doha has become the place where each side tries to control the narrative. Qatar serves as a venue for mediation, but the real center of the dispute is between Washington and Tehran. The United States wants to turn the memorandum into a means of pressure and control. Iran wants to present the agreement as a list of obligations that the Americans need to fulfill before any final negotiation. Israel enters this story on another front. At the United Nations, the Israeli ambassador Danny Denon responded to accusations that Israel attacks civilians, doctors, humanitarian workers, and journalists. He said that Israel does not target civilians and accused the United Nations of operating on a kind of anti-Israel autopilot.
Nations accuse Israel of deliberately killing civilians. That Israel deliberately attacks doctors, humanitarian workers, and journalists. I've come here repeatedly and said this clearly. Israel does not attack civilians. Israel does not attack journalists. Israel attacks terrorist groups. But many of you today chose to repeat the same accusations.
This reaction came at a meeting about the West Bank after 5 European nations warned companies against contracts linked to the E1 project east of Jerusalem. Danon tried to make it clear that Israel does not accept being put in the dock while facing terrorist groups and diplomatic pressures at the same time. His statement matches the broader atmosphere of the crisis. Israel sees part of international diplomacy trying to isolate Jerusalem, while its allies try to show that this interpretation doesn't add up. Danon himself pointed out strong ties with Gulf nations and mentioned positive developments in South America, where a new political wave has brought governments closer to the United States and Israel.
This or that.
There are definitely positive trends. Everyone talks about diplomatic isolation, but there are also, positive things. The relationship with the Gulf countries is very strong. Look at what's happening in South America. Many countries are now forming friendships with the United States and Israel, which is incredible. Countries like Bolivia and Chile, Peru, which in the past took positions against Israel, Colombia, the elected president is a true friend of Israel. I'm heading into the Security Council in half an hour for a tough discussion about the settlement in Judea and Samaria. The discussion will be led by the Colombian ambassador, who served under the previous government. She is hostile, of course she will attack us, but in a few weeks at the beginning of August the new president will take office, he will replace this ambassador, and because of that, there is very good news of support for Israel coming from South America.
Colombia is now a symbol of this movement. Abelardo de la Espriella won the Colombian presidential election and promised to rebuild relations with Israel and the United States after the tensions of Gustavo Petro's government. This detail is important because Danon treated the South American change as proof that Israel's isolation is not absolute. On the contrary, while international forums apply pressure, new right-wing leaders in the region are trying to reposition their nations alongside Washington and Jerusalem. Hungary also figured into Israel's calculations, but with a warning. Orban was mentioned as a staunch ally of Israel in international votes, but he left the government after the electoral defeat in April 2026. The new government of Peter Magyar changed the political environment in Budapest, and this takes away Israel's automatic support within Europe.
This reduces support in some regimes, but there's another side. We saw Hungary, for example. By the way, do you feel the change in Hungary at the UN as well? No.
Not yet. Not yet, but we certainly expect that it won't be the same thing. Orban was a true friend of Israel and the United States. He acted mainly within the European Union. In the European Union, to approve decisions, the consensus of all members is required, and automatically, every time a decision against Israel was proposed, countries like Spain, France, Orban would come and say, "We're not going to discuss this. I am totally opposed to this discussion." He immediately rejected the discussion. I suppose that won't be the case with the new government in Hungary, but we still have allies who remain and help us, like Czechia, Bulgaria, and others. In other words, it's important I convey that we're not alone. Despite the feeling that everyone is against us, that's not accurate. We have friends in the world.
Even so, Denham mentioned allies like the Czech Republic and Bulgaria to show that Jerusalem still has important diplomatic bridges outside the bloc most critical of Israel. Within Israel, the government also reinforces national identity as part of the response to external pressure. The Minister of Education, Yoav Kish, announced reforms to place Jewish and Zionist studies at the center of the curriculum in public schools, funded by the State Ministry. Education reforms, Jewish and Zionist curriculum in schools.
Despite the difficulties, we continue to promote education. We do not forget the Jewish identity, our central pillar that supports everything. Our connection with the land of Israel, the Torah, and the chain of generations. We have invested tens of millions in the Torah as a discipline and in tradition to strengthen Jewish identity in the educational system.
The program seeks to make Jewish identity a mandatory foundation in students' education with increased funding and the inclusion of content related to the Bible, history, heritage, and connection to the land of Israel. The government is working to strengthen the cultural foundation at home. A nation under external pressure tries to prevent its new generation from losing its connection to its history, its faith, and its legitimacy. Trump also linked the external crisis with the internal ideological dispute in the United States. Trump, in a recent speech, described the rise of Democratic Socialist candidates as a serious threat to the American nation.
Zohra Mbamadani said in an interview this week that she would be open to being the face of socialist candidates. Are you concerned about the rise of socialism around the world?
Well, I think that's actually a big threat to our nation. It's not socialism, it's communism. They use the word social democrat because it sounds so good, but it's actually communism they're talking about. I think it's the greatest threat our nation has ever faced, maybe since our founding. That includes World War I, World War I, and September 11th. It covers the Pearl Harbor attack. I think that's the biggest threat to our nation. People will smile when I say that, but smart people will say, you know, he's probably right. It's basically introducing communism into the United States of America. There's never been anything so dangerous. Thank you.
The statement came in the context of the midterm elections. Weakness in the face of Iran and the rise of the radical left are part of the same problem. When Trump says he governs with common sense, he's trying to contrast his stance with what he calls ideological confusion. In the case of Iran, common sense means not rewarding Tehran while Tehran refuses to negotiate. Domestically, it means attacking communism as a direct threat to American life. Either Iran fulfills what it promised, or walking away from the meeting speaks louder than any official statement. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel, focused on keeping you informed with the facts. Your contribution helps us keep going.